Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to welcome all of you here this morning. And in a very special way, I would like to welcome our special guest, Brother Joel, our Regional Councillor for Elam, and Brother Chris Pattinio of the General Council in Rome. Brothers, you're very welcome, especially welcome. The rest of us, we kind of all know one another. I'm looking at Chris, and he's a very old friend because I think he knows us very well too. But you're most welcome, every one of you, to this very special time over these 3 days. I want to begin by saying I'm delighted to be here for our second Mel Council Assembly, our Mel Assembly today. But I'm even more excited that you are here. And your presence, it seems to me, makes a reality of shared mission. Sharing mission isn't something that we should talk about or write about necessarily. It's really something that we do, and probably even something that we are. Standing here in front of you today reminds me of our first mission assembly held in Kinbury during the midterm break of October 2018. And I have to tell the truth, I was a very reluctant participant, at least initially. As a teacher all my life, I prized and valued my holiday time, even more so, I think, than the children. So people messing with the holidays didn't go down easily with me. But you know, as the days went along, and as the community of the assembly grew in Kinbury, I think I found myself actually enjoying it. And I hope that will also be your experience in the days ahead. And you know, when you think since that first district mission assembly in 2018, what a journey we've been on. And Joe will develop later how we have responded over the last 4 years to what that mission assembly asked us to do. But in a general way, I would just like to reflect on maybe just two major developments since that time. Firstly, the COVID. And it affected all of us, the schools, and also our district administration and our district mission team. Schools were forced to adapt to a new reality and to reach out to children in a way and in a new way that they were able to learn new skills and perhaps also realize that children were very fragile, and perhaps not just children but adults as well. And as time went on, teachers and students learned to cope while others simply couldn't cope and weren't able to adapt. The results of this tsunami are still being processed, and it will be some time before we can assess the actual effect and how effective our response has been. How complete has it been, or perhaps it's just been adequate. The other reality since the last mission assembly is a very different and much more positive one. And that's been the development of our district mission team, capable of accompanying, supporting, and even challenging our schools and education centres and pastoral centres. When we concluded the first district mission assembly, we had one full-time paid position, which was a director of formation. Now, after 4 years, our office comprises a director of mission, a director of formation, both full-time paid posts, a district bursar, a district secretary who is part-time, a district head of vocations and association who is part-time, and a safeguarding team comprising 6 people in all in our district. In addition, one of our 2 auxiliaries has a responsibility for the development of mission and is a member of the district mission team. This, by any standards, is a massive sea change, and it reflects a huge and genuine commitment on the part of the district to a sustainable mission for the future. In effect, our structures have changed radically. There is now a significant involvement, genuine collaboration, and serious consultation between brothers who, on the one hand, through the Visitor and District Council, continue to bear the responsibility and the burden of the mission, and the partners, on the other hand, who increasingly take on roles that the brothers once held. Therefore, while the change has involved the creation of new positions, in reality, what this represents is a shift of power. Yes, rights, but on the other hand, responsibilities. And as this transfer of authority continues, where tasks once the preserve and responsibility of the brothers only are now overseen by our Lasallian partners, it is crucial that they, the partners, have the protection of the law or the rule behind them. In other words, we must create new structures which allow them to do their job properly and safely. Surely, this journey, this handing on of the baton from the brothers to Lasallians, is further evidence that we are indeed becoming one LaSalle. And of course, this is our assembly theme, One LaSalle, coming as it does from the General Chapter of 2022. And it's now an institute-wide dream. We certainly have a long way, we have come a long way since 1986. If I could just reflect back a little, when our then Superior General, I can still remember the letter. John wrote wonderful letters every year to the brothers, and where he told us that the old hierarchical model of the triangle, I don't know if you're familiar with it, where the Pope is on top and we go down to the great unwashed down at the bottom, squeezed very much because everybody else is sitting on them. So that old hierarchical model would be replaced by the circle, where we all took our place, all equal, but with different tasks and responsibilities. Clearly, there was a move away from brothers only towards Lasallians. We would from then on speak of a Lasallian school and not a brother school. And the dream of shared mission had been born, and De La Salle's heritage, his charism, were not for the brothers only. No, it was for all of those who would take the educational approach or the dream of this wonderful saint and make it their own. And so after 50 years, we can glory and wonder in the fact that Lasallians hear the challenge and the invitation of De La Salle no less clearly than the brothers did, and they in their turn are just as enthusiastic and filled with zeal in their teaching vocation. And it makes me ask the question then, what exactly did De La Salle give us? A vision of education where children are cared for, especially poor children. And his challenge is as real today as it was in 1720. Perhaps there is one major difference. Today, this mission belongs to all of us. And we all hear the cry and the invitation of De La Salle when he says to us in the first meditation for time of retreat, and I quote, "You have been called by God to this ministry, and you have been given the grace of teaching and the gift of exhortation for the sake of those entrusted to your responsibility. Use these gifts you have received with care and vigilance in order to fulfill the main duty of fathers and mothers to their children." And again in the third meditation he tells us, or asks us, and this is an invitation to all the Lasallians and not just the brothers. They, the children, are a letter which Christ dictates to you, which you write each day in their hearts, not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God. That invitation, that urging, is for all of us, not just the brothers. But what is it that we, as followers of John Baptist de La Salle, are being called to in our time in our schools? Perhaps the challenges facing education today are different, but they require, it seems to me, the same enormous courage, generosity, and creativity demonstrated by De La Salle in his time and in his life. Ours is a world of terrible inequities, grinding poverty, deep loneliness, meaninglessness, and aimlessness. Was there an extra-lessness there? We live in a world that is very material and in which, for the most part, it's the survival of the fittest, people with the money. Sadly, one of the potential casualties of our time is our endangered climate and the future of the planet. There are huge challenges facing us, but we all know that education is the greatest weapon at our disposal in the war we must wage if society is to be emancipated from hopelessness. And it's a frightening realization that it is within our power to change the world. We don't often think of it that way when we go into school on a Monday morning, or when we go into our admin office and we see how we're going to serve our schools and our pastoral centres. But we have that power within us, it seems to me. Recently, I listened to a very interesting discussion on the role of technology in the world, and a conference shortly to be hosted by the Technological University of Dublin will be asked, how does technology impact society? How can technology become a friend of the people? How can it support and care for humanity? What kind of virtue ethics, it was a new word for me, it's positive ethics, it's distinct from just making profit. How can virtue ethics be required, or what kind of virtue ethics are required if technology is to befriend the planet and possibly even help it avoid extinction? What seems to be at stake is a battle between the rich tech companies and their profits on the one hand, and the good of and potentially survival of the planet. There are enormous challenges and questions for society and those of us in education. Not easily should we be forgiven if we don't face them. And I was fascinated to hear the response of last year's graduating class from the University of Paris, who refused graduation because they felt these questions weren't being answered in their educational system. So for us as a group of educators, we need to face the real questions. At our Lecala conference, it's the Irish trust body that our Lasallian schools are in Ireland, in Mullingar, a town in Ireland, last Friday morning, a speaker challenged us by asking us the question, what does the Catholic school in Ireland stand for in our time? What are the hallmarks, I would ask, of a Lasallian school in our time? And I have no doubt that our response, if we were asked for it, would point to the 5 core principles, which our schools continue to explore and embrace and put into practice. Inclusivity, faith in the presence of God, quality education, care for the poor and social justice. And perhaps is it now time to add a 6th, care for our planet and the future of civilization. We are gathered here for this assembly because we care for young people and because we want to make a difference in their lives, in our world, through the education and the experience which we provide within our schools and centres. But again I ask, why do we respond to the needs of children? Why do we care? Why do we answer the urgings of De La Salle when he tells us children need good teachers like visible angels to help them to learn? I think we respond because we are answering a call. Yes, teaching is a profession and it's our career. But quite often, most teachers want more. They know their job is a very special one and they want their work to make a difference in the lives of the children they teach and care for, and a difference in the world and society as a whole. They are answering a call which allows them to give something back. And from this very act, from that buy-in, there grows a sense of ownership. Lasallians feel that they have been given the charism of De La Salle and they are responsible for it. In this sense, we are all one La Salle, brothers and partners alike, all on the same journey to make a difference in the lives of children, to be the ambassadors our founder wished us to be. And as we move in this direction, or answer this call, in my estimation, it is out of a sense of gratitude. When we wish to give something back, we do it out of a sense of gratitude. And while mostly we are motivated to give as a means of saying thanks, the reality is we actually receive much more from the giving. Just a little quote from his book, The Little Book of Gratitude, lovely little book by Robert Emmons. And he says, gratitude has been fittingly referred to as the quintessential positive trait, the amplifier of goodness in oneself, the world, and others, and as having the unique ability to heal, energize, and change lives. So gratitude, it's a very, very, very powerful tool. And I think as I go around the district, I meet people, teachers particularly, who want to do more, and it's out of that sense of gratitude, and it's wonderful. And I ask the question then, is this a means of transforming the world through education? Learning to feel blessed for all we've been given, the talents and the gifts and the wonder of the world that we live in, and teaching our children to be grateful. This would surely help us to create a happier and more fulfilled world for all. G.K. Chesterton, the great and wonderful Catholic poet and author, once said, "I would maintain that thanks are the highest form of thought, and that gratitude is happiness doubled with wonder." And finally, I just want to make a brief comment, because I was asked to comment on this. I won't say by whom. The very question that John asked us this morning to write down. What did I see as the major challenges or the major hopes or maybe concerns even for the district? So you'll be happy, I'm nearly at the end, and I'll be very, very brief. I wouldn't wish to prejudge what the Assembly will decide, but I just thought of the future at two different levels. So, as somebody who spent all my life in school and who absolutely loved that environment and that vocation, I thought about this question from the point of view of schools and going into schools now in a different job. I think we urgently need to find ways to help teachers enjoy their teaching a lot more, so that they can be more effective in their work and be happier in their lives. And I ask again the question, is it time to rewrite The Conduct of Schools, that wonderful book that De La Salle wrote? I think it is. I shouldn't have answered that question. I was told just ask some questions, don't answer. I also think that our schools and centres, and of course we're operating out of I think 5 or 6 different educational systems, need, or I would like to see them develop and build on, because it's there already, that sense of inclusion where we cater for, look out for and welcome children who have special needs. Children who 20 years ago would not have been able to come to a regular school and now are in our schools. And I think we need to open our doors wider, and we need to be more creative in the way in which we look after them going forward. And in terms of schools, I'd love to see a new confidence in our centres, because sometimes you go into school and it's ground down by exams and by points and by grading and all of these things that squeeze the good out of it. And I would love to see that our centres could realise their potential, their enormous potential. And I asked the question, what would need to happen in order to release that potential and realise it? And in terms of our administration, because as the brothers are getting older, and we are, you can see it here, we're handing on the baton, and I think we are, and what I said to you earlier, I think will be a sign of that. I mean, we've done, I think, great work in that. We have, as they say, much done and much to do. I think we have to build structures of governance that protect and support those who will bear the responsibility for the mission, and also, at the same time, to protect and support those who are being served. And the questions might be, how will we shepherd the schools and the centres? Will we be open to supporting, encouraging, consulting, challenging if necessary? will we need to consider how to maintain our Lasallian ethos and identity in a very challenging environment. District structures in terms of the mission team will need to be refined so that it can operate more effectively, and that increasingly the mission team will take responsibility for all significant aspects of the mission. These would include formation, finance, vocations, support of the schools in a variety of ways. It obviously differs from country to country, and sometimes even within countries. There is much to be done to ensure good governance and that no aspect of the mission, no aspects are omitted. So they're just some of the challenges. I could go on, but I'm sure you've heard more than enough. So in conclusion, I would just like to thank you for listening to me, but in a very special way, and we'll do this properly at the end because now is not the time to do it. But somebody said to me just last night in the airport while we were waiting there, how wonderful the preparation for this assembly has been. And that just didn't happen. And it didn't just happen yesterday or over the weekend. It's been happening over the last 2 years. And I won't name people today. We'll name them, please God, at the very, very end when we get them to, when we'll say a proper thank you. But I do, on all of our behalf, want to thank everybody who's been involved in preparation for this assembly, and that I think has already ensured that wonderful work has been done. And I think their work will also ensure that it will come to great fruition for all of us. So thank you very, very much. Have a wonderful and a blessed Mel Assembly. God bless.